Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to take a look at this thing here. This is the KingKong FlyEgg 130mm FPV racing drone. It comes in this box and I haven't yet put it all together because I don't want to open anything until you've seen how it arrives. So you get the props, both clear and a white set, which is a nice idea. You get motor protectors, which is very handy. You also get big motor protectors, the kind that you can screw onto the bottom that will actually enclose the blade entirely, so if you bump into something you aren't going to make a mess of it. You have a little tool for fitting bits and pieces on, and you also have a couple of additional rubber bands. It comes with a battery pack. This is a 550 milliamp hour, looks like a 2S battery with a JST and a balance connector on it. And then you have a little USB cable in case you haven't got hundreds of these things already, but it's always nice to have it in the box. And then we have the model itself. Little manual here. You can get them with lots of different versions of receivers plugged in, or you can get it without any receiver at all. This one's come with a little official real FrSky XM Plus at the bottom. For the kind of zooming around that I'll be doing, that's perfectly fine, but it's connected via S-Bus, so putting your own kind of receiver in here is going to be a piece of cake. And then we have the manual. I do like actually having this box because it does mean I've got a place to put all of this gubbins while it's not being used. Otherwise it goes in one of the big spares bins and it disappears forever. So let me just zoom in a second and let's just have a look at how this thing's put together and what's actually on here. So hopefully now we're a little bit tighter on the model, you can see it a little bit better. And isn't that pretty? The carbon fibre for the arms I don't think is particularly thick. I think it's probably 2mm carbon fibre. The edges aren't super duper well finished, but the way the frame's put together, and we've actually looked at a couple of KingKong frames and ready to fly quads already, and generally they're pretty well put together bits of kit. They're sometimes not the most elegant of stuff, but they've definitely put a bit of thought and effort into this. This kind of aluminium frame here is really, really pretty. It looks like something out of a movie. The motors on this thing are 1105 700 kV motors. The propellers that we get in the kit, I'm going to pop those on. You get the long screws. It's the kind where there's two kind of screw holes at the top that you pop them in with. They just held in with those M2 screws. Those are actually 2840. The camera at the front is a little 800 TVL CMOS camera. We'll see what that's like. It's a very, very small unit in here, so I'm not sure how it's going to perform. And we have an FPV transmitter, switchable between 25 and 100 milliwatts. And then down below we have all the brains. At the top it looks like we've got the Pico BLX F3 flight controller, and under that we've got our speed controllers, little 10 amp BL Heli D-Shock capable speed controllers. So all in all, and there's our little FP aerial at the back, which means that we're going to have to use some kind of patch antenna. I'd always recommend, if you're going to get one of these and fly it around, particularly if you're not going to be flying behind yourself, you're going to kind of be stood at the side of the field while you fly it in a field or fly it in your property, get yourself one of the Menace RC patches. Those linear patches are fab if you've got this style of antenna. The battery has a JST connector to connect it into the bottom of the model. I think some of the original ones were actually using the balance tap. Using a JST is a much nicer idea, and I do like the fact that you actually get the battery too. Couple of other little nice touches considering the size of this frame. If we kind of look under its tail, which does kind of feel like I'm looking right up its backside, there's a couple of LEDs for orientation. That's great. I actually put a couple of LEDs in the back of one of my recent builds just to help with orientation, particularly if you're flying at dusk or in poorer light. And even better, that is actually a piezoelectric buzzer. So it's also got a buzzer on here as well, which I think is a necessary thing if you're going to fly these smaller quads outside, because particularly in any kind of long grass, they tend to just disappear. Now the only thing I've done since opening the package before I kind of started shooting the video, I have just rerouted. This is the FrSky XM receiver. Before, the way it worked, I actually had this antenna was kind of all curled up underneath. I'm just going to hot glue it so it sticks out the side so that we actually get proper reception. Having it all underneath the battery and underneath all this carbon fibre would have made reception horrific. So let's plug it into Betaflight and let's just have a look at what we can see. So here we are in Betaflight Configurator. This is genuinely the first time I've ever plugged this thing in. All I've done is very briefly powered it so that I could bind the receiver to the radio. Interestingly, I had to use a radio that was using the international version of the firmware, so it looks like the XM receiver that's in this thing is actually the international one. Now that's not a problem, you could flash it with the other version, but just be aware of that. So let me just plug the USB cable in. We'll now connect. I have my radio turned on and bound as well, and hopefully if I move the model, nose down, nose up, there we go, left and right. That is a very successful looking initial setup. It's also sat perfectly level on the screen as well. You could calibrate the accelerometers at this point, but you don't have to. Let's just see what the ports configuration is like. So serial receiver is set on UART3, nothing else is set up really, so that's fine. Looks like we have no on-screen display capabilities through Betaflight, but we'll check that in a second. Let's check the configuration out. So it's running multi-shot, which is interesting because the speed controllers themselves are actually D-shot capable according to the manual. So let's just fly it with a basic configuration first before we change anything, and if I need to I'll tweak things. Everything is pretty standard in here so far. Spectrum satellite, S-bus is selected. The only thing enabled is LED strip for those two LEDs at the back. VBAT is turned on. Not sure why that would be and the on-screen display wouldn't be, but let's carry on having a look. We can just turn on expert mode to make sure that we don't miss anything. Let's go into receiver. Let me raise the throttle. At the moment I'm not seeing any reception at all. If I look under the model, yep, it looks like we're going to have to power the model from the mains in order for the receiver to work. So sadly this isn't one of those that plugging it into the USB port is going to power everything. So let me briefly disconnect and pull the USB cable out of the side of the model. I'm going to power it up again. The little QC sticker on the top tells me that somebody's done some testing, and it seems to be. Okay, it's kind of fired up. Let's plug it back in and see if we get any more out of it. There we go. Again, orientation still super duper. Right, let's try this again. Let's go into the receiver. Okay, if I move my throttle, yeah, it's the wrong default setup. So the channel map is set for aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. Mine defaults to spectrum. Oh, that should be better. So now if I raise the throttle goes up and down, and the middle values are ish. You're potentially could do with a bit of sub trim to get them as close to 1500 as we can. And if we go down, they don't go below 1000 or above 2000. That is fab. Okay, pretty standard stuff. That all looks good. Next thing we'll do is test the modes. So let me just check. Auxiliary 2 is the one we're going to use to arm the board. Auxiliary 1 should be the one I'm going to use for my modes. And auxiliary 3 is set up on the radio for the buzzer. So let's set that up. So this is how it's set by default on the model. Arming is on auxiliary 1. I'm just going to switch that to auxiliary 2 because it's going to work for me. Auxiliary 1 is the one that I have my mode set on. Interestingly, it's very, very similar to how I have it by default. Let's click save. Other thing we're going to do, we're going to add a beeper range for auxiliary 3. So now if I move the switch, you'll see the little indicator for the switch position move. Let's just put that up there and save that too. And now if I flick that switch, we can hear the beeper going as well. Fantastic. That looks really, really good. And as you probably saw when I accidentally armed the quad, and this is why we never put the props on until we're absolutely happy with everything's configured. If I arm the quad,
Throttle active.
all the motors are running beautifully.
Throttle disabled.
So we're in a good space. Let's just see what version we're actually running. Okay, so it's not a particularly modern, up-to-date version. We're a little bit out of date here, but that will still be fine to let us go and fly. Right, let's unplug all this then. Now we're happy, and let's go and just double check that the FPV gear is all going to work and what we need to do in order to get it on the right channel and band for the goggles. So in summary, what do I think? Well, the simple answer is I'm actually pretty impressed. There's only a couple of things that I would have really liked that are not on the model. One is a Betaflight on-screen display so I can keep an eye on the battery voltage. And the second is some of those little artifacts and the way the camera's performing. Now the camera can be modified. I tilted my camera a little bit further up than the way it's applied. It's a little bit flat in my humble opinion, and when you're flying around, because this thing is quite nippy, you do need to increase the camera angle slightly. Now to take the side off, you undo the gold coloured screws, and then be careful, there's a couple of black screws going through the 2.5mm carbon frame at the bottom into the bottom of these side aluminium pieces. You need to pretty much take that whole side off, and then the camera will move. That's a little bit fussy for setting the camera itself, but you know what, I'm kind of nitpicking at this point. So in summary, what do I think? Well, the headline is I'm pretty impressed. If somebody asked me if this was a good model, I would say absolutely. If you don't mind the fact there is a Betaflight on-screen display, and you don't mind the fact that that camera is only good as opposed to excellent, then this is definitely worth a look. I love the way it's put together, that it's very lightweight, it's well under 250 grams, so if you're looking for a little model that you can carry around that's not going to need to be registered, or if you have a law in your country for things above 250 grams, this is well under that weight limit. I think it looks very neat too. There's been quite a few of these kind of egg-shaped enclosure frames around, and to have one in this kind of small size quad, it does look very pretty indeed. I do like the fact it's supplied not only with the standard configuration as we've just looked at, but we also have the option to have the motor mounts, which will protect it in the event of a crash. If you're going to be flying in a muddy field, I'd probably put those little motor protectors on. And one of the crashes that I had, I managed to get quite a bit of mud in one of my motors and had to spend a nice 2-3 minutes with a little toothbrush trying to get it all out. And you've also got those props as well that you could put around the entire thing to act as prop guards. So if you were flying indoors in something like a sports hall or something like that, that would allow you to do it without getting caught in any netting or anything at the side. The setup in Betaflight is really, really nice. The way it's configured, the tune, the way it performs, the way the rates are set up is impressive. A lot of these quads that I've looked at in the past have had pretty standard tunes. Some of them have had tunes that made the model fly terribly. This hasn't got that problem, and that's nice to see that someone's taking the care and effort to do that. The battery that's supplied with it will give you just about 4 minutes flight time. So I would recommend, if you're getting hold of one of these, buy at least 1, maybe 2 more batteries. Otherwise you'll go all the way to the field, have a big grin on your face for 4 minutes, and then have to land and go home again. Other thing to mention is it is really, really quiet when it's flying. So this is a model that you would also get away with flying in places where people maybe have a problem with the noise of larger quadcopters, because this thing does fly like a much bigger model and is beautifully stable and performs really well. In the end, I didn't go back and change any of the ESC settings in Betaflight because it flew so nice as it is out the box. So just to finish, just be aware of a couple of things. The FPV channel selection is done by a button on the FPV transmitter on the top of the flight controller. The way it tells you which mode it's in is by flashing 2 lights, one after the other. There is a little crib card that comes as part of the kit, so you definitely want to keep that box and all the spares in a safe place. So if you do want to change that at the field, sadly that's a bit tricky. It would have been nicer if there was a slightly easier way to see which frequency and band and channel you were actually using. The way you change between 25 and 100 milliwatts is via a bridged connection on the bottom of the VTX as well. So if you wanted to change it, you're going to have to take the frame apart, flip the VTX over, and either make or break the connection. If it's got the connection made, which is the way that mine came here, it's on 100 milliwatts. If it doesn't have the connection made, it's on 25. So be careful to check that if you're flying in an area where you're legally limited to 25 milliwatts. The linear antenna seems to work very nicely, and again, all of that footage was filmed with the Bandicoot patch antenna from Menace RC, so if you're going to get one of these, invest in one of those patch antennas as well. It will give you really nice reception for these little small quads. And then those last other comments were no Betaflight on-screen display. I think that would have made this a standout model to be able to have voltage and current and things displayed in the heads-up. And that camera, again, is absolutely fine for flying around, but just be careful if you're going to fly in particularly challenging conditions. It's a standard voltage and connection setup, so I guess if you really wanted to, you could probably swap it out for something like a Runcam Nano later on if you wanted to improve the quality of the video. But in summary, this is one of those models that I have been impressed with and I really like. So if you're looking for a very capable quad that you could fly in a large indoor space or even go outside and have a lot of fun with, that's very quiet, that's less than 250 grams, but also could be used as a trainer as well, then this is definitely worth a look. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release 1 or 2 extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.